I thought I was being the perfect mother. Every morning at 6:30, I would prepare nutritionally balanced breakfast for my 12-year-old son Jamie and my husband Marcus. I had detailed schedules for our entire family because I believed structure meant love. I knew what was best for everyone. When I saw Marcus and Jamie exchange those strange glances across the breakfast table, I dismissed it as typical morning grogginess. I was doing everything right as a wife and mother, ensuring our family thrived under my careful guidance. I thought I was protecting them, nurturing them, loving them the way they deserved. I thought I was doing my job perfectly until everything I built came crashing down. Before I share this story, could you tell me where you are watching from? Please hit that like button if you have ever believed you were doing everything out of love. Do not forget to subscribe to hear more stories about the expensive lessons life teaches us. Now, let me tell you how my need for perfection destroyed the very family I was trying to protect. Growing up, I never experienced the warmth of a loving family structure. My mother worked 3 jobs just to keep us afloat, often leaving before dawn and returning after I had fallen asleep. My father was a ghost in our house, physically present, but emotionally absent, buried behind newspapers or lost in television static. I spent countless evenings alone heating up frozen dinners and doing homework at our empty kitchen table. The silence in our home was suffocating, broken only by the hum of appliances and distant traffic. I promised myself that when I became a mother, my children would never feel that abandonment or uncertainty. When I met Marcus during our sophomore year at college, I knew I had found my salvation. He was gentle and family oriented, someone who talked about Sunday dinners and holiday traditions with genuine warmth in his eyes. He came from the type of family I had always dreamed about, where parents asked about your day and siblings shared inside jokes. Our courtship felt like stepping into a different world, one filled with laughter and connection. When he proposed during our senior year, I cried not just from joy but from relief that I could finally build the family I had never had. Jamie arrived 3 years later, and holding him for the first time felt like my life suddenly had purpose. This tiny human depended entirely on me, and I was determined to give him everything I had missed. I read every parenting book available, researched child development theories, and created comprehensive plans for his growth and happiness. While other new mothers seemed to stumble through those early months, I approached motherhood like a science project, documenting feeding schedules and sleep patterns with military precision. By the time Jamie turned 3, I had established detailed daily routines that governed every aspect of our household. Wake up time was 7 o'clock sharp, followed by a breakfast that included specific portions of protein, whole grains, and fresh fruit. I had researched the optimal nutrition for growing children and refused to compromise on quality. Playtime was structured around educational activities that would stimulate his cognitive development. Even bedtime stories were carefully selected for their moral lessons and vocabulary building potential. I became increasingly selective about Jamie's social interactions, carefully evaluating the families in our neighborhood before allowing playdates. The Henderson children next door were too undisciplined, often seen running around their yard, unsupervised, while eating sugary snacks. The Williams family down the street seemed nice enough, but their house was always chaotic, with toys scattered across their lawn and children who stayed up past reasonable bedtime hours. I wanted Jamie to associate with families who shared our values of structure and purposefulness. When Marcus gently suggested that I might be overthinking some of my decisions, I felt hurt and misunderstood. He would say things like, maybe Jamie could just play freely sometimes, or not everything needs to be planned. I explained that he simply did not understand the complexities of motherhood, that protecting our son's future required careful planning and constant vigilance. I was not being controlling, I was being responsible. I was giving Jamie the stability and guidance that I had never received. Jamie began speaking less during our family conversations, usually responding to my questions with simple nods or one-word answers. I interpreted this as maturity and good listening skills. He was learning to respect authority and follow instructions, exactly what I hoped to achieve. When other children his age seemed hyperactive or demanding, Jamie sat quietly and ate his vegetables without complaint. I felt proud of how well-behaved he had become under my guidance. As Jamie approached his 8th birthday, he expressed interest in learning guitar after hearing music at a friend's house. I researched the benefits of various instruments and determined that piano would provide a more solid musical foundation and better opportunities for classical training. Guitar seemed too casual, too associated with rock music and teenage rebellion. I enrolled him in piano lessons with Mrs. Chen, a strict instructor who emphasized proper technique and disciplined practice schedules. Every evening, I supervised Jamie's homework, checking each assignment for neatness and accuracy. If his handwriting was not perfectly legible or if he made calculation errors, I would have him rewrite the entire page. Excellence required attention to detail, and I wanted him to develop high standards for himself. I created a reward system where good grades earned him educational privileges like additional library time or nature documentaries instead of cartoons. My dietary restrictions for Jamie became more stringent as I learned about the negative effects of processed foods and artificial additives. I eliminated candy soda and most packaged snacks from our household, replacing them with organic fruits, raw vegetables, and homemade granola bars. When he attended birthday parties, I packed alternative treats so he would not feel deprived while maintaining his healthy eating habits. Other parents sometimes made comments about my thoroughness, but I knew I was giving him advantages they were too lazy to provide. Marcus began expressing more frequent concerns about my parenting approach. He would suggest allowing Jamie to make some of his own choices, or to relax certain rules during weekends. These conversations often escalated into arguments where I felt attacked and unsupported. I would ask him why he wanted our child to be like other undisciplined kids in the neighborhood, why he did not care about Jamie's long-term success and well-being. Marcus would grow quiet during these exchanges, which I interpreted as acknowledgement that my points were valid. I gradually extended my organizational skills to managing Marcus's life, as well believing that a united family required coordination and purposefulness. I questioned his plans to meet friends for drinks after work, suggesting that as a father and husband, he should prioritize family time over social activities. I reviewed our monthly expenses and created detailed budgets that eliminated what I considered wasteful spending on unnecessary items like expensive coffee or impulse purchases. Marcus began working later hours and spending more time on weekend projects that kept him busy around the house. I assumed he was responding positively to my encouragement about being more productive and responsible. Our conversations became more focused on logistics and schedules rather than casual chatter, which seemed appropriate for a mature married couple with serious responsibilities. By the time Jamie turned 9, our household operated with clockwork efficiency, but I noticed that both my husband and son seemed more subdued during family meals. I told myself they were probably tired from their busy schedules and would benefit from the stability I provided. Everything began unraveling when Jamie turned 10 and started experiencing problems at school that I had never anticipated. His teacher called to inform me that some classmates were teasing him about being different, specifically targeting his lunch choices and his reluctance to participate in casual activities during recess. Instead of the typical sandwiches and snacks that other children brought, Jamie carried carefully portioned containers of quinoa salad, sliced vegetables, and homemade protein bars. While other kids traded cookies or shared candy, Jamie ate alone with his methodically planned nutrition. I immediately scheduled a meeting with his teacher and the school counselor to address this bullying situation. I explained that Jamie was being raised with higher standards than his peers and that their teasing stemmed from jealousy and poor parenting on the part of other families. I requested that the school take disciplinary action against the children who were targeting my son for his healthy lifestyle and good behavior. The counselor suggested that perhaps Jamie might benefit from more opportunities to connect with classmates through shared experiences, but I dismissed this advice as misguided. When I arrived home that afternoon, I found Jamie crying in his bedroom, something I had not witnessed in years. He looked up at me with tears streaming down his face and said, "I just want to be like the other kids sometimes, Mom. I want to eat what they eat and play what they play." His words stung because I could not understand why he would want to lower his standards to match children who lacked proper guidance. I sat on his bed and explained that I was raising him to be special, to have opportunities and advantages that other children would never possess. I told him that someday he would thank me for protecting him from the bad habits and poor choices that surrounded us. Marcus's behavior became increasingly problematic around this same time. He started coming home later than usual, claiming he had to work overtime on various projects. However, I detected the smell of alcohol on his breath and realized he was stopping at bars instead of coming directly home to his family. When I confronted him about this deception, he became defensive and accused me of being overly suspicious and controlling. I could not understand why he would prioritize drinking with coworkers over spending quality time with his wife and son. Our first major argument happened on a Thursday evening when Marcus suggested that we were being too restrictive with Jamie's social life and dietary choices. He said that I was micromanaging every aspect of our family's existence and that both he and Jamie felt suffocated by my constant oversight. I was devastated by these accusations because everything I did was motivated by love and concern for their well being. I cried and asked him why he no longer trusted my judgment, why he wanted to see our family fail like so many others around us. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, then walked outside and spent the night sleeping on our living room sofa. The distance between us continued growing over the following months. Jamie, now 11, received an invitation to a birthday party for one of his classmates, but I declined on his behalf after learning that the celebration would involve pizza cake and arcade games. I explained to the other parent that we maintained certain dietary standards and that the party environment would not be appropriate for Jamie's development. When I told Jamie about my decision, he exploded with anger in a way I had never seen before. He shouted that he hated me, that I never let him have fun, that I was ruining his life. His outburst shocked me because I had raised him to be respectful and controlled. As punishment for his disrespectful behavior, I grounded Jamie for the entire weekend, requiring him to spend his time reading educational books and practicing piano instead of his usual weekend privileges. Marcus witnessed this interaction and said quietly, "This is enough, Hazel. You have gone too far." I could not believe that my own husband was taking our son's side against me when I was simply trying to maintain appropriate boundaries and consequences. I asked Marcus why everyone in our family was turning against me, when all I wanted was what was best for them. The situation deteriorated further when I discovered that Marcus had been communicating with a female colleague through text messages about work-related projects. Although the messages were entirely professional, I felt betrayed that he had not mentioned this working relationship to me. I confronted him about what I saw as secretive behavior, demanding to know why he felt the need to hide his professional interactions from his wife. Marcus was furious that I had been checking his phone without permission, and he accused me of violating his privacy and treating him like a child rather than a partner. Our argument that night was the worst we had ever experienced. Marcus told me that I had become impossible to live with, that my need to control every detail of our lives was destroying our marriage and damaging our son. I screamed back that he was being selfish and irresponsible, that I was the only one in our family who cared enough to make the difficult decisions that would ensure our long-term success. Jamie emerged from his bedroom during our shouting match, tears streaming down his face as he begged us to stop fighting. The sight of our son's distress should have brought us together, but instead, it seemed to highlight how broken our family had become. Marcus looked at me with exhaustion and sadness in his eyes and said, "I need some space to think about this marriage, Hazel. I need to figure out if we can find our way back to each other." I felt as though the ground was disappearing beneath my feet. This was not supposed to happen to families who worked hard and maintained high standards. This was supposed to happen to people who were careless and irresponsible, not to people like us who planned everything carefully. Marcus moved out on a Tuesday morning while Jamie was at school packing his clothes and personal belongings into suitcases that he loaded into his car with mechanical efficiency. I followed him around the house, desperately trying to convince him that leaving would solve nothing, that we needed to stay together for Jamie's sake. I promised that I could change, that I could be less involved in family decisions, but even as I spoke these words, I did not truly understand what I was promising or why change was necessary. Marcus hugged me goodbye with the sad tenderness of someone attending a funeral, and I realized that he was not just leaving temporarily to cool off. He was starting the process of ending our marriage. When Jamie returned from school that afternoon and learned that his father had moved out, I expected tears and pleas for us to reconcile. Instead, he simply nodded and asked where his dad would be living. When I explained that Marcus had rented a small apartment across town and would be picking Jamie up for dinner that evening, my son seemed relieved rather than upset. He hugged his father tightly when Marcus arrived, and I heard him whisper, "I understand, Dad." For Dio, the fact that my 11-year-old son understood and accepted our separation when I could barely comprehend it left me feeling more isolated than ever. Living alone with Jamie should have brought us closer together, but instead, it revealed how much distance had developed between us. I maintained our usual routines and schedules, hoping that consistency would help us both adjust to Marcus's absence. However, Jamie moved through his days like a robot, completing his assignments and chores without the tantrums or resistance I had expected. His perfect compliance was not the victory I had once imagined. It was the mechanical behavior of a child who had given up trying to express his own desires or opinions. I called Marcus repeatedly during the first week, apologizing for my behavior and begging him to come home. He listened patiently to my promises to change, but he consistently said that I needed professional help to understand why I had become so controlling and rigid. This suggestion infuriated me because I was not crazy or mentally unstable. I was a devoted mother and wife who had worked harder than most people to create a loving, stable home environment. The idea that I needed therapy felt like another attack on my character and judgment. 3 weeks after Marcus moved out, I received a phone call from Jamie's school that changed everything. The nurse informed me that Jamie had fainted during lunch and that I needed to come pick him up immediately. When I arrived at the school, I found my son sitting in the nurse's office, pale and shaky. The nurse explained that she was concerned about Jamie's weight loss and suggested that I take him to see our family doctor for a complete evaluation. At the doctor's office, Jamie was weighed and measured, and the results showed that he had lost 8 pounds over the past 2 months. During the examination, Jamie barely spoke, answering the doctor's questions with yes or no responses while staring at the floor. When the doctor asked if he had been feeling stressed or anxious, Jamie glanced at me nervously before nodding. The doctor requested to speak with Jamie privately, and I reluctantly waited in the lobby while they talked. After the examination, the doctor asked to meet with me alone. She explained that Jamie was showing signs of anxiety and stress-related disorders, and that his weight loss was likely connected to emotional rather than physical problems. When I insisted that Jamie was healthy and happy at home, the doctor gently suggested that sometimes well-intentioned parenting can create pressure that manifests as physical symptoms in sensitive children. I felt attacked and defensive, insisting that my parenting style was based on love and high standards, not pressure or stress. That evening, as I prepared Jamie's usual nutritionally balanced dinner, he looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before. He seemed older somehow, more serious than any 11-year-old should ever appear. "Mom," he said quietly, "I want to live with Dad." His words hit me like a physical blow because I had never imagined that my own child would choose to leave me. I asked him why he would want to abandon our home and our routines, why he would prefer his father's temporary apartment to everything I had built for him. Jamie's response shattered every assumption I had made about our relationship. He told me that he felt like a prisoner in our house, that I had never asked him what he wanted or how he felt about anything. He said that living with me meant following rules that made no sense to him, eating foods he did not enjoy, and missing out on experiences that seemed normal to everyone else. "You never ask me what I want, Mom," he said. "You just decide everything for me, and when I try to tell you how I feel, you explain why I am wrong." I sat in our living room that night after Jamie had gone to bed, surrounded by the beautiful home I had created and maintained with such care. The walls displayed family photos from happier times, and the shelves held books and games I had chosen to enrich our lives. Everything around me represented years of thoughtful planning and devoted effort, yet somehow I had managed to lose everything that mattered most. My husband was gone, my son wanted to leave, and I could not understand how love and protection had somehow transformed into control and suffocation. The lowest point came when I finally admitted to myself that I needed help, though this acknowledgement felt like admitting failure as a mother and wife. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, who specialized in family dynamics and anxiety disorders. During our first session, I spent most of the hour explaining how hard I had worked to create a perfect family environment and how ungrateful Marcus and Jamie had become in response to my efforts. I expected Dr. Martinez to validate my dedication and help me understand why my family was rejecting my love. Instead, Dr. Martinez asked questions that forced me to examine my motivations and methods in ways I had never considered. She asked me to describe my own childhood and how it had influenced my approach to motherhood. As I talked about the loneliness and uncertainty of my early years, I began to see connections between my past experiences and my need to control every aspect of my family's present. Dr. Martinez helped me understand that my fear of abandonment and chaos had transformed my parenting, from nurturing into micromanaging. The therapy process was painful and humbling because it required me to acknowledge that my good intentions had created harmful outcomes. I learned that love without trust becomes control, and that protection without freedom becomes imprisonment. Dr. Martinez explained that children need opportunities to make choices, even small ones, in order to develop confidence and independence. I realized that I had been so focused on preventing Jamie from making mistakes that I had never allowed him to learn from experience or express his authentic preferences. After 2 months of individual therapy, I finally found the courage to call Marcus and offer a genuine apology without asking for anything in return. I told him that I understood how my behavior had damaged our marriage and that I was working to change my approach to relationships. I did not ask him to come home or make any commitments about our future. Instead, I simply acknowledged the pain I had caused and expressed my commitment to becoming a healthier person, regardless of whether our marriage could be saved. Marcus agreed to attend family therapy sessions with Jamie and me, though he made it clear that he was not ready to discuss reconciliation. During these sessions, I learned to listen without defending myself, to ask questions instead of making statements, and to validate other people's feelings, even when they differed from my own perspective. Jamie was initially suspicious of my changed behavior, waiting for me to revert to my old patterns of control and criticism. Slowly, I began implementing changes in my daily interactions with both Marcus and Jamie. Instead of planning Jamie's birthday celebration according to my standards, I asked him what kind of party he wanted and followed his preferences, even though it included pizza and video games that I would never have chosen. I apologized to Marcus's friends for my previous rudeness and hostility, acknowledging that I had been threatened by relationships that took his attention away from our family. I joined a support group for parents who struggled with anxiety and control issues, where I met other mothers and fathers who had similar stories of good intentions gone wrong. Hearing their experiences helped me understand that my problems were not unique or shameful, but rather common responses to childhood trauma and unresolved fears. The group provided practical strategies for managing anxiety without imposing control on family members. Learning to trust Marcus and Jamie to make their own choices was the most difficult part of my transformation. I had to resist the urge to offer unsolicited advice or criticism when they made decisions that seemed suboptimal to me. I practiced asking for their opinions instead of assuming I knew what was best, and I discovered that both of them had thoughtful perspectives that I had never bothered to consider. 6 months after Marcus moved out, our family began tentative discussions about him returning home. This was not a simple reconciliation, but rather a careful rebuilding process that required new agreements and boundaries. I committed to continuing therapy and maintaining the changes I had made, while Marcus and Jamie agreed to be patient with my ongoing efforts to become less controlling and more trusting. Our family today is not the picture of perfection I once tried to create, but it is healthier and more authentic than it ever was before. Jamie laughs more often and brings friends to our house where they eat snacks I never would have allowed in the past. Marcus and I go on date nights where we talk about our dreams and concerns without my trying to solve all his problems or manage his decisions. I have learned that true love means giving people the freedom to be themselves even when their choices make me uncomfortable. The most important lesson I learned is that sometimes the people we hurt most are the ones we love the most, especially when we confuse control with care. Real love requires trust, patience, and the willingness to let people make their own mistakes. It means supporting their growth rather than directing their every step. And it means accepting that they might choose paths we never would have selected for them. Sometimes the hardest person to forgive is yourself. But when you do, you discover that love is not about controlling someone's choices. It is about trusting them enough to make their own. Have you ever realized that your attempts to help someone were actually hurting them? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because these conversations help all of us grow and learn from our experiences. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more about the complex lessons that relationships teach us. Share this with someone who might need to hear that change is possible, even when it feels impossible. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it reminds you that love, real love, sometimes means letting go. May you find the courage to trust the people you care about most.